Thanks, Adam. Good evening to you both. This is for Mr. Negron. You oppose abortion in all cases. So what would you say to a mother who's in a medical emergency who will die if she has to deliver a baby?
I think that's a decision between her and her doctor. I think right now the decision is that we have advanced medical procedures that, in the situation that we want to bring back an archaic idea that all of a sudden we have to choose a mother or a child. I don't think we're at that point right now. I think we have prenatal care that's outstanding. It's some of the best in the world. And so right now, I don't think we get to this point that it's so draconian that we have to make a decision whether or not it's the life of a mother or the life of a child. Look, Kevin, I'm a pro-life guy. Right? And I don't believe that we should exacerbate a problem or situation by taking the life of another human being. So no, I believe that the medical profession out there is doing the right things. We have all the information that we need and they make a joint decision, but it shouldn't be an overt act. If things happen in the process of delivering, then I believe that situation that was going to happen. But to actually say, I have to make a choice, I don't agree with that.
Representative Custer, we know the Hyde Amendment prohibits public money to be used to pay for abortions. Do you think that law should be repealed? Why or why not?
Well, look, that's the law of the land, and that's what people have settled on. I think what's much more important is the laws around whether people have the right to make the most personal decision in their lifetime. I was an adoption attorney for 25 years. My opponent has taken the position that he wants to ban all abortion, whether it is rape, incest, the life of the mother. And I've taken the position that we need less government interference in people's personal lives, and I think that's the majority position of voters in New Hampshire.
Mr. Negron, you were invoked there. You can have 30
absolutely.
seconds.
When a situation arises where somebody has become pregnant through rape or incest, the last thing we want to do is add on top of the angst of that individual. And I have met, well, I'll say, to the person that I have met that's had an abortion, 100% has regretted it. And we can do better than that. We're not a society of death. We're a society of life. And if that situation occurs, we shouldn't be adding to the situation where that young lady is going to have to go through.
And Congresswoman Custer, to the Hyde Amendment, would you support its repeal?
I said no, but this is very important to me. For the government to force a woman to carry a pregnancy to term, I presume Mr. DeGrom means to put a woman in jail for 9 months, and so that she carries a child to term. I think that is government interference in people's personal lives, and I am opposed to that.
I don't think I ever said jail. I never said anything about putting anybody in jail. I'll tell you what I do oppose. I do oppose federal dollars going to a private organization to killing babies. That's what I do oppose. But we do it all the way right now in funding Planned Parenthood with your tax dollars.
That's what the Hyde Amendment is.
We all know, Congresswoman Custer, that and I know that's what happens.
The question is the Hyde Amendment prohibits
even if it's prohibited, they do it.
They do not. They do not.
Well, then I will introduce you to people that work at Planned Parenthood that actually conduct abortions.
We're going to stay on this topic.
And they don't do it with federal funding.
Oh, yes,
Congresswoman Custer,
yes.
Ohio and a few other states have passed laws, some of which are being challenged in the court, that ban abortions after testing that shows the fetus likely has Down syndrome. Those in support say it prevents selectively aborting unborn children based on health issues. Are there any circumstances where an abortion should not be legal?
Again, I just believe in less government interference in people's personal lives. I don't think it's a decision for the government. I think it is one of the most personal decisions. I represented over 300 women with unplanned pregnancies. It's not the government's choice whether they would carry a baby to term, whether they would terminate a pregnancy, whether they would place a baby for adoption. I've walked the walk on this. I feel very comfortable in my position, and most voters in New Hampshire agree.
Mr. Negron, let's pivot to that. I mean, you're a 10th Amendment guy. You've repeatedly said you're in favor of leaving many decisions up to the states. Then why should the federal government be involved in deciding if a woman can have an abortion?
Well, I think it's taken a life, and the federal government is involved in taking lives in other cases. And I just want to go back to Congresswoman Custer. In trying to be smart up here in a debate, I went and looked at Planned Parenthood's financial report for the year. Federal dollars went in there, and you look at what they do abortions. So I just wanted to make that point.
Dollars are kept separate.
Thank you.
This is very carefully accounted for, and I think you're mistaken.